morning, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Children and Families Scrutiny Committee. For those of you that don't know, my name is Councillor Lee Redman. I'm lucky enough to chair this committee, and on the side of me is Evie, who is my vice chair. For those of you that can't see, so just for clarity, we go through some items. It's only committee members that are present in the room that are able to make any decisions should we have to go into any votes. And just for clarity, my committee is lucky enough to be able to have co-opted members on, and they are specifically here to help and support an education item. So they would only have a vote if the item is in relation to education. The agenda papers have been published on the council's website in advance. A supplementary agenda pack was circulated on the 14th in respect to the education finance consultation. The meeting is being audio recorded. This will be published on the council's website in due course. Today's meeting will be run using the hybrid format. That's where committee members, key officers physically present in Bridgewater House, or other elected members and officers may physically join the meeting remotely. As always the case, please, if you want to speak, please indicate, raise your hand, and I'll come to you as and when we do. Just for clarity, the way that I like to chair meetings is that we have the presentation. If you can indicate, if you have a question as you go, make a note of the question, and I'll come to you as we go round. What I tend to do is I'll bring members of the committee in first in the room, and then virtually any other members that have a comment or question, I try to include them. I try to be as inclusive as possible. The use of the chat function is only for the purposes of the meeting, primarily to indicate if you wish to speak or raise your hand, etc. If you could please speak only at my invitation. It would be helpful for those of us that are new or newish, if you could give your name and your role in the council at that particular time when you start to speak. That would be excellent. Importance to turn the microphones off when you're not speaking, and cameras if it suits you. Teams has the ability for live captions, which you can enable if you wish so at the bottom of the screen. I've just realised for those of us with council devices that the Windows have just sent an update, so it may at some point during the meeting, if you're using your device, ask you to update, but you can suspend it till later. As mine of that. So item 1 of the agenda is apologies for absence. Jamie.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. We have received absences. We have received apologies from Councillor Clayton and from Eileen Tipper, one of our co-opted members. I do understand that Ruth Hobson, one of the co-opted members, is running late, but that's it, Chair.
Thank you. And I see Tessa joined us. Sorry, I didn't see you come in, Tessa, so welcome. Thank you. Okay, so that's item 2 of the agenda is declarations of interest. Members, I'm asking you if you have any declarations of interest that are prevalent to today's agenda. Your normal declarations have been recorded and they are publicly available if required. Any further declarations of interest? Thank you. Okay, item 3 of our agenda is the minutes of the last meeting. They've been circulated. Members, are you happy to confirm them as an accurate record? There's moved. Thank you. Any points or comments in relation to the agenda that's not covered otherwise, in the minutes that aren't covered otherwise? Thank you. And then also I've got item 4 of the agenda, which is to us to agree the minutes of the joint meeting held on the 25th of October. They've been circulated again. Any points or comments in relation to those? You happy that I sign? So moved. Thank you. Just a small point for that one. There was a number of outcomes from that meeting that related to, I think the vaping one was the one that was most important to us. Where we are at the moment is we're about to write, so that we've agreed the outcomes in relation to what we want to propose for reference vaping, and we're about to pass those across to the executive. So for those of you that, just for clarity, this committee can only make recommendations, and generally those recommendations are directed towards the executive. So in effect, what we're saying, we're asking the executive to take our recommendations and do something with them. So hopefully for the next executive meeting, our proposals in relation to vaping will be passed to them, and then hopefully that will come back with some actions or some points. I think the world is starting to catch up with our proposals anyway, so it will be interesting to see where we are for that. And just for myself and also the chair of the Adults and Health, I want to thank those members that took the time to come along to that meeting. I think it was a really productive meeting and we had some really good debate, and I was pleased that I could feel that when we all left the room, we felt that we achieved something, which I think is an important part of what our meetings should be doing, and hopefully that will come back. So we look forward to a response for those recommendations. Any other points or comments? No? Okay, so item 5 of our agenda is public question time. There are no questions that I'm aware of, so we can move on for that one. Item 6, which is our Scrutiny Children and Families Work Programme. You'll see that there's an outline for what the next meeting, which will be in December. We've also been invited to Adults and Health with for some of the topics that they're just discussing in December. You see our forward work plan and programme. So any points or comments in relation to our forward work programme, members? Simon, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. On the work plan, I'm not on the right page for it, but regarding vaping, it's shown as green or completed. And I'd like to keep it orange because we haven't yet written to the executive. And also, if we're about to write to the executive, there's a couple of things that have happened since. Hopefully the rest of the executive will have a Think 25 policy in it. We are looking at vaping on licensing, though trading standards have a lot to do with that. But something that's come up recently is there is a converted burger van selling vapes at markets which are under the control of Somerset Council. Now, I have approached officers about this, and I've been told because vape products are not under the prohibited list, certainly in Mender, the old Mender, for selling in our markets, they can't do anything about it. But we need to look at reviewing the policy and the list of prohibited goods, which should also include tobacco, really, in my opinion. But it just seems not right that we're promoting or want to look like we're promoting reduction in the use of vapes, and yet in our own markets we are letting people sell them.
Thank you for the point. So just for clarity, so one of the recommendations we have as a thing 21-25 is one of the proposals that we're making to the executive. Thank you for your point. What I will ask you to do is if you could drop me a note in relation to that, purely and simply because it probably doesn't come under children's services, that particular item, it's licensing. But what I can do, we can make sure that that point is included. And one of the things that we're asking quite specifically for is that Somerset Council uses its licensing and enforcement arm in a stronger way in relation to vaping and this, but that will come from a response back from the executive. So if you drop me a note in relation to that, I'll make sure that those points are covered and clarified. Any other points or comments in relation to our work programme? Just for clarity, members, so our next meeting will be the 12th of December. The venue at the moment is Yeovil offices, the council chamber at Yeovil. I'm saying that out loud now so that I'm pleased to say that everyone in the room managed to turn up in the right place, which is good, because otherwise we're so used for a Children and Family Scrutiny Committee going to Taunton, and the fact that we're going around, I think is going to. I was just trying to remind everyone. So the next meeting is going to be in Yeovil, and one of the points that I'll remind everyone of now is that we're going to be looking at potentially at the SEND system, particularly in relation to EHCPs. Is one of our favourite subjects that comes up on a regular basis. I'm saying that out loud now so that if we go through the agenda today, there are EHCP questions. Don't be surprised if I say, can you save that till next month? So I'm not saying we won't have debate because it depends what your question is. I'm just reminding, letting you know that we have that on our agenda going forward. As always, members, you are our eyes and ears, and the same goes for officers. So anyone is welcome to make a recommendation for an agenda item for this committee. We will consider it, and because as has been said before, we can't be everywhere, we can't see everything. So the more that is fed in, the more chance we have to do items which are both useful and beneficial. Okay. Any other points in relation to our future work programme? Thank you. So item 7. So before we move on to the next bit, just a couple of quick points. The agenda shrunk a little bit. There were some issues from our pre-agenda meeting till publication where things, one of the items that we hoped to have slipped. What I've asked that we do is, I think the transformation programme is something of importance that we would, as a committee, need to understand and serious. But what I've done, to make it flow a little better, obviously, the transformation programme is linked in some way to our budgetary position. So I've included them, items 7.1 and 7.2. They're two separate items, but they're being taken as one because they are linked. So that being said, so item 7.1, which is our children's service budget monitoring. Claire, I believe that might be yours. Is it also Sean? Does he want to introduce? You need to turn the microphone on and
Morning. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Sian Kenny. I'm Finance Business Partner for Children's Services. Caroline's kindly shown the slides for me. The two areas of funding for Children's Services, the Local Authority Fund, which is the general fund, and the Dedicated Schools Grant, which is a considerable chunk of money for education and inclusion around special educational needs. Moving on to the first slide. So the first area that I want to talk about is the general fund. The position that's being reported in the slides is month 5. I'm going to give you a bit of a verbal update around month 6 because in terms of publication for this agenda, we haven't finalised the month 6 figures, but I'll give you a verbal update as we go through month 5. So as at the end of August, the general fund gross budget is £212 million. 89 million pounds worth of income and a net budget of 123 million pounds. The forecast overspend at the end of month 5 was 11.8 million. The bottom line for month 6 is a 12.4 million overspend, so a slight increase. As I go through the main areas of spend here, I will explain why that increase has occurred between the months as well. The main areas in the general fund are external placements and home to school transport around children with special educational needs. What you'll see starting to change now between month 5 and future months is we are now getting more meaningful reports out of our finance system. And so on the report that you have in front of you, you'll see lots of zero variances between the budget and the forecast end of the year. That's now starting to change as we're getting more meaningful reporting out of our system. And some of that is why there's been a change between month 5 and month 6, because we're starting to get some more information that we can then apply in terms of forecasting our year-end expenditure based on what we've spent to date and where we know the costs are coming through or where we know underspend is coming through. So for children and families section, which is the top part of that slide, the 10.1, I'm looking at an update on month 6, sorry. The 10.1 million overspend is now 10.7 million for children and families. This is an adverse movement of 0.6 since last month, but the bulk of this is to do with a technical under accrual that we've identified through looking at invoices that have been processed at the start of the year. At the end of each financial year, to close our accounts, we make accruals. So if we are aware that there are providers that we have a 2023, we make an accrual for those payments so that when we do finally pay those invoices, they will then be reflected in the correct financial year, i.e. 22-23. We made a significant number of accruals, £3 to £4 million. But what we have identified now that we're looking at the 23-24 payments is that we under accrued by 0.9 million. We've escalated this with our external auditors, Grant Thornton, they're aware of it. We cannot make an adjustment into our accounts because we've closed our statement of accounts for last financial year. So unfortunately, what's presented in this year's accounts is £900,000 of expenditure that relates to 22-23. This was mainly around 2 providers where we changed our invoicing from monthly to weekly. And at the end of the financial year, some of those weekly invoices weren't picked up at the end of the financial year. So what is underlying is actually a reduction in children and families forecast positions. So the hard work that the service has been doing to look at those unregistered placements and those high cost residential care placements, there has been an actual reduction in the forecast on external placements since last month, but it's masked by the fact that we've got this under accrual and the impact of that hitting our 23-24 accounts. So I think that's everything around external placements and children and families. The other area that we've started to come through through the meaningful reporting is that there is an underspend in fostering and permanence, which we were expecting anyway, because we know from the service that there's a lack of sufficiency in some of the transformation work that Claire and Caroline are going to take you through as part of this item is showing what we're trying to do to increase the number of foster carers. And then ultimately that budget will start to be spent as we can see that we're moving children into in-house foster care and out of those high cost expensive external placements. So that's another change for month 6. The commissioning area is reported on target in the report that you can see for month 5. There's actually an underspend. We've managed to review all the contracts for spend today and identified a 0.3 million underspend on commissioning, which is helping reflect a reduction in the bottom line. Inclusion remains the same for month 6, so the report that you've got in front of you is still accurate for £1.7 million forecast overspend on SEN transport. And finally, education partnership and skills, EPS, we've seen an adverse movement of 300,000, mainly due to the fact that we've identified that we have less income than we were anticipating around Somerset Centre for integrated learning, skill, and also for music education, which has had a lower number of bookings. So being able to access that more in-depth information on historical spend has enabled us to look at potentially the forecast for the rest of the financial year, and that's reflected in the month 6 report. Not a huge amount of change, but some change since month 6. So on to the next slide. You're all familiar with this, but the external placements pressure of 10.1 million, which has reduced slightly if we take out the under accrual since last month, is mainly around unregistered placements. That 4.2 million overspend in month 5 has come down as the service is working to move those children and young people out of those placements and into either Home Horizons or registered residential placements. The residential placements overspend of 4.2 million in month 5 is slightly increased, but that's a net reduction as we've seen some of those children move from unregistered into residential, but these are a significantly lower weekly cost. Go to the next slide. I have shared this diagram before and I wasn't particularly intending to go through it again, only if you have some specific questions, but these are the key cost drivers. We're seeing CLA numbers being relatively stable. There was a peak. The impact of those CLA numbers is more children going to care, and we can see on that slide the differences between last year and this year around placement days, number of children looked after in external placements, and the change in the average weekly cost between last year and this year. The transport, again, I think I've shared this before. It was part of the EDGE report that that you'll be familiar with. They did a lot of research into demand and costs and the cost per passenger. And over the last few years, since 2018, we've seen not only the significant increases in children and young people with EHCPs that are driving the numbers up, the demand, but also we've seen the passenger costs increasing around fuel, inflation, etc. And overall, the cost per passenger has increased quite significantly. See on that table at the bottom there. So they're the main cost drivers and the main areas that are creating or resulting in that pressure on the general fund for children, family and education. Moving down to the next slide, we look at DSG. So this is the other element of funding for children's services, and we talk about deficits in DSG because we're looking at a grant. But similar language to overspends. So 15.6 million forecast in-year deficit at month 5. Again, these are month 5 figures. There has been very little change in the month 6 position, so I wasn't planning on giving any verbal update on that. The position is relatively stable in terms of forecast at the end of the financial year. If that in-year forecast deficit remains at 15.6 million, this gets added to our cumulative deficit because we hold it in a crystallised reserves in the accounts. It will mean that we are forecasting a cumulative deficit of 37.5 million. And the statutory override for that crystallised reserve ends in March 2026, at which point it will become an issue for the local authority. Unless something happens between now and then, in terms of central government funding or a change in policy. Next slide. The main key cost pressures in relation to DSG are around volume and of children with education, health and care plans, and the lack of sufficiency around special schools. That's been the main area of pressure over the last couple of years, and there's lots of work being done through the DBV programme with Empower, which I'm sure will be covered later in the slides, around trying to reduce the reliance on independent non-maintained schools, which are really high cost places.
Sorry, Sean, acronym DBV.
Oh, sorry, Delivering Better Value programme. So there were two DFE programmes, the safety valve, which top 3 local authorities with the highest deficit went into that programme. The middle third of local authorities with significant deficits but not severe, which included Somerset, went into the Delivering Better Value Ascend programme with the DFE. And ultimately, as a result of that, we've got some tasks and some transformation to undertake through working through that programme. We talked about the external placements on the general fund. There is an impact on the DSG of the number of children looked after, in that where there are multi-agency contributions to funding a child's placement, if there is an education funding element to that external placement, that comes from the DSG. And so the budget that we set for DSG contributions to children looked after placements was lower than we are now seeing, and so therefore that's creating a £0.9 million deficit on the high needs block. There is a small deficit on the schools block in relation to finding education places for asylum seekers. I think that's me on the budget.
Only because members put their hands up. Obviously, so the designated schools grant, the education, I made a note down here, you talked around the DSG, but on the budget monitoring report, it doesn't show there. So I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it just so that everyone else can get it. So where is the DSG reported, and how does that affect us?
It is in the executive budget monitoring report. It's a separate section, so there Claire has to sign off or produces a report and narrative for Children's Services General Fund, then the DSG, and then local authority maintains schools balances. So there are 3 sections to the executive budget monitoring report, and DSG is covered.
Yeah, sorry, just for clarity, in the budget monitoring report you presented to us, the first screen, that one doesn't show DSG, does it?
No, because they are separate funds.
That's what I mean. That's the point I'm
Sorry.
making.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So our day-to-day funding is what we're looking at here for children's services. The DSG and the schools element is a little bit separate, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's that page on your report. It's a slightly different format because it's a grant and we're talking about block funding and deficits and surpluses. I don't have any surpluses, and I don't think many local authorities do at the moment on their DSG. But yeah, it's a slightly different format. We are working on the format and we're trying to make it clearer. We actually tried to make it too clear, and if you look at the executive report, we included a very complicated table, which a lot of the feedback on that was that it's too complicated. So we've tried to simplify it again, and we're working on how we try to apply some consistency, but it doesn't really look consistent just because of the nature of it.
I've not been in a lady with members with their hands up, so I'll keep pushing the point for a second. And so just for clarity, so there's been some news in this past month about designated schools grant potentially running a deficit. There are some that are saying that some councils are struggling with those finances. That it might be worth can you tell us where we are in relation to that? Where's, is there anything, where are we as far as the DSG goes as the council? And would that be an item that might be worth bringing back, a separate item in the future that talks how the schools grant? Claire, sorry.
So on this slide here, it talks through which areas are the key deficits. The key area of deficit is the high needs block. That relates largely to children with the HCP. So it might be useful to include that in terms of the impact of the issues we have around children with SEND in Somerset, not children's system, in the item next month, which we can ask Rob Hart to include to explain how that deficit's made up.
Thank you.
And sorry, one further point which popped into my head is we also report this in a lot more detail to the schools forum, which has some powers, statutory responsibilities.
Thank you for that, Clarence. That was where it is. We don't have much influence over what goes on with that. That's the point I was getting at. But some more information would be useful. Members, I'm not being inundated with arms, so sorry, Francis, thank you.
Yeah, it's a back to the
Need to put the microphone facing you.
bit closer to me. Okay. Okay. The back to the money, our money. I do appreciate that there have been all sorts of problems about the new system and getting information out of it. It's helpful to have verbally something about month 6, though it's always feels a little uncomfortable when we're looking at month 5 and but I think I want to know whether the zeros that are around in month 5 are now have disappeared for month 6 completely. So we now in month 6 we actually have a forecast.
Yeah.
Because until then we have no forecast at all.
And sorry, just to be clear, there are some zeros, but that's because we believe those budgets are coming in on budget, not because we don't have any information on them.
Okay.
So you will see some zeros.
No, you're allowed to have
Every-
0 if you mean.
Every single area has now been reviewed
Yeah.
by finance and with the service directors.
Yeah.
And all the forecasts are now based on historical data that we now have access to and their known transformation strategies, operational intelligence, and that's how then forecasts are built up. And if they are forecasting genuinely to come in to budget, that will show a zero variance.
Right, okay. If that's there, why couldn't we have had it for this meeting?
It's timing of the sign off. We've literally just signed off the month 6 report, and it's about the ask of having information
Okay.
in advance of the meeting.
Yeah, okay. So since we're going to be looking at finances every month, we'll have a real up-to-date one next month, or will it be out of date next month? Because it'll be month 6 and not month 7.
I think the timings of the scrutiny meetings are being looked at in terms of when the timing of the budget monitoring is then going to the full scrutiny committee and then executive.
Yeah.
I need to check the dates to know
Yeah.
whether month 7, because we're preparing month 7 now. So all of the accountants are looking at the detail in month 7. They're having meetings with delegated budget holders, but they won't have met with the service directors or Claire yet until that build up of that intelligence is then pulled together. And then my service managers meet with the service directors and go through their service position. And then a final meeting takes place with Claire. That's then submitted to the corporate service, who then collate the whole thing. So although we're on the 15th of November, we've only had like 9 or 10 working days since the month end closed. And so the month 7 position is still being nailed down in terms of all those conversations.
I appreciate the difficulty. I just think for scrutiny committee, which is tasked at the moment, particularly with looking at budgets, that if we could have as up to date as possible, it would help. Because I was twitching like anything about zeros sitting around, and I know now that they don't exist anymore except where we mean them. But we haven't got that, so it's quite difficult to have a picture. And I know you can't answer it, but I just would like to leave it with you, Mr. Chairman. Is there anything we can do about this?
Okay, so
Sorry, just a suggestion, and it's whether you're comfortable with this, is having something a couple of days before the meeting, if we do know that information available. So we can send month 6 out like we have in line with the deadline and the agendas going out. But if we know then that 1 or 2 days before the meeting, it's all, being signed off and the position is the position, we can circulate it, but it can't be late.
I was going that way to test it. Do you want to just come in quickly and then?
Yes, I'm aware you have your hand up. I'm sorry, it's cut across, but this seems to be a structural and organisational problem, Chair. If maybe we can sit with Democratic Services and make the system work, or us work to the system, but this will be something that affects every other area of the council, every scrutiny committee, because everybody's looking at finance. So probably need to try and make it work all round rather than trying to squiggle things around 2 days in advance and stuff. We need to make the whole thing work.
If I might.
Let me just, one of the things that I was going to come back to was about how, as a committee, we get the actual time drilling down on the budget. And you will know, committee, that I've written back to the executive saying, could you be a bit clearer on what your expectation is in relation to what I'm looking, and I'm still waiting for a more detailed response. But one of the things I was going to suggest that we do, if going forward, and this report is very similar to the one we had last month, and the one, and the bit that it's highlighting is the fact that there are 2 areas of overspend. So what I was going to suggest was, unless anything changes and another area overspend comes in, next report has a little bit more detail around the 2 areas that are overspending. So that, because it's a bit of deja vu. This time last year, I remember saying it's the same area. So the first thing I would want to do is ask for more detail under those lines. Okay, I will come to you in a second. The reason I'm saying it out loud to members now is because we would like, as a committee, to use our time to the best of our ability. And at the moment, the reports are coming, really amazing reports, and we're getting there. But if we're going to comment on the overspend, we need to know what the overspend is and how it breaks down. So that might be one of the things I was going to say, a little bit more detail to allow us to examine a little bit more where it goes. And who wants to be trumped, Claire or
Ladies first.
See you later. I was just going to say, in relation to the budget report, I think it would still be helpful for the committee to have all the budget information across all the different lines, because actually there are issues in terms of underspends, where you've got underspend in fostering, as Sean's just said, which is not where we would want to be. So you need to see that, because actually if we can sort that one out in terms of having the right number of foster carers paid the suitable amount, that will reduce the overspends in other areas. So by being able to see that number hopefully reducing, you'll be able to see the work in the service to actually improve the sufficiency of foster carers in the system.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's pretty much what I was going to say, but it's actually, I think it is, yes, it's overspends, yes, it's underspends, and it's also the stuff that's coming in. We need to have a look at everything. We need to watch everything, because the committee will have ideas.
Thank you. So let me clarify what I was going to say. I agree, we need the budget overview, which is the one with all the numbers on. However, underneath of that, rather than tell us that external placements are overspending, give us a bit more detail about those. And we get a headline bit that's there, which shows the good and the bad. But we as a committee, if we get, I would suggest that we would like to get exactly the same overspends and underspends at the next meeting, that we're having the same conversations about. So in an effort for us to hopefully allow this committee the ability to dissect it a little bit more, what I'm suggesting is that we add a bit more detail to the main overspends so that we can have a little look at that. Because the last thing I would want to do is say, okay, that's fine. The next one, I want a full line by line budget so that we can examine it a bit more, because that potentially, the only way that we can understand it is to see it.
In terms of what might be useful then, just so we can be clear about what you think might be useful, the next level of data down will be the report that sets out the movement between the previous month and the current month and external placements in terms of change of type of placement, which would give you, not, because we obviously can't give you individual child data, but we could give you, 2 children moved from internal fostering to residential, or 4 backwards, or whatever's happened, so you can see where the movements are in the system, which would, and the cost of that, so that you can see the number of children that have moved and the cost of each type of move. which might give you some more detail that would help you understand what's happening in the system.
So you've made a valid point as to where it is. So let me just rewind slightly. The executive has said to each of the scrutiny committees, have a look at your areas of overspending and comment. We as a committee have said, go back to the executive, said, you've asked us something, that's fine, but what are your expectations? Because like last year, external placements and home to school transport are the two overspends. We did an examination on external placements task and finish group, and we had an external report about home to school transport. What's changed in that? So if you and the cabinet member would like to meet with myself and the vice chair between meetings so that we can make sure. What I'm saying is I would like, if possible, to have this bit where we look at the budget monitoring report to be meaningful, and I'm not sure that the level of detail that we're receiving at the moment is. Members, tell me if I'm wrong. And then that's where the point I'm making in this particular bit is the fact we need some more detail, or we need to find a way to make this bit of the meeting more meaningful. Otherwise, we look at the same report next month. Just let me finish. So that's that bit. Question in relation to the report. What's the difference between home to school transport, which is currently showing at breaking even, and send transport? Because that's confused me, because I understood that home to school transport was the one that was overspending. Claire?
So home to school transport is the headline, if you like. It's getting children from home to school. And underneath that is broken down to what is there described as home to school transport, which is mainstream children being transported to school, which is where children are either cannot get to school without school transport in the legislation because they live too far. So the over, I don't want to say that number because I can't remember the exact number of miles, or whatever it is, it changes between primary and secondary, or if there's an unsafe route to school. So we have to provide school transport statutorily. That budget line is easier to predict and is relatively stable because not many children move school in year. So you can do all the work at the beginning of the year, work that out, and we can be fairly confident that prediction is right for in year. Send transport, so home is also home to transport school, but it is for children with special educational needs. And we have a statutory duty in law to provide transport for children with special educational needs to go to school. So the number of children in that cohort changes significantly because the number of education healthcare plans changes and goes up really over the year, in year, and children move a lot more in that cohort between schools. They move from mainstream to special, might move between specials to INMS, and the distance of those between those schools and homes obviously vary hugely. The costs of that are having the transport in Somerset having to put new routes in place because there are a lot of very small independent or maintained schools, and therefore there need to be new routes. Some of those children need single person transport. They can't go on a bus, they can't be in a small vehicle or a minibus, etc. So the cost of that ramps up very, very quickly. It's not very predictable because as new assessments come in, you don't know what that's going to look like because you don't know who's going to come in for an assessment and what that might look like in terms of their education requirement during the year, which is why you get the big fluctuations in home school transport for children send and very little fluctuation in mainstream home school transport.
Thank you for that clarification. Could I ask, I think if the members of this committee and the members generally might benefit from a definition, a breakdown of that, because I understand that there's a status, there's a requirement, but it might be if you maybe get one of yours on a page. I didn't want to suggest that it would be someone in particular, but so my suggestion. For the next meeting, can we have an explanation of home to school transport, the statutory elements and the non-statutory elements in relation to that? Because I think that would be a good point of clarification for people to understand. And the fact that it's been split out, I think is a good thing, because that shows there is a difference there. And if we can add an explanation why there's a difference, that would help. Because at the moment, you ask most members of council where the areas of overspending children's services are, they say home to school transport. If there's different bits of home to school transport, then let's make that point clear so that we can actually show some definition and change. I've got Francis, and then unless anyone else comes in, I'll look to let you go on to the next bit and let you off the hook.
So three different things. Absolutely, the detail that allows us to understand. Absolutely. Secondly, yes, let's make the system work. If we if we fail to make the system work, let's have the squirrel away later, up-to-date data a couple of days before the meeting, so that at least we've got it. And the third one is that the send transport is such a huge area. And is about inclusion in mainstream schools, because after all, if they're in distance and going to their main school is their local, there won't be the transport. And also questions of the other ways of doing things, where I do know of an instance where the school's organising the transport because it proved more effective for them to do it than the transport in Somerset, and whether that's actually something that we would want to look at, but that's not for now.
Let's get the note, and then we can see next time when it comes in, and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at that, and there's a lot of work going on. And certainly Claire and Rob Hart have been doing an enormous amount of work in this area. So no worries, we are on it, but thank you.
So just for clarity, in my comments, there is no criticism of anyone or anything. I know that the tremendous amount of work that's going on across the whole of the council, and I thank officers and everyone involved for that effort. I recognise that. I'm just trying to find a way to as the committee to get a better effective use of our time for the requirements. Off a soapbox, do you want to move on?
Okay, thank you very much. So I have Caroline Barnes with me, who's the transformation programme transformation programme project manager. So any detailed questions, Caroline can answer. So we just wanted to go through what we're trying to do in terms of transforming children's services to make sure that we provide what children and families need, but also in times of great financial constraint, both locally and nationally, making sure that we are focused on the right areas to make sure we can reduce costs wherever possible, but maintain what children and families need. We have to accept that we are not now looking at gold-plated services. We are looking at what we have to do that will be adequate to make sure that families have what they need because of the financial issues. So as I've said in this slide here, our statutory duties are at the core of our work. We still will maintain a business as usual approach for all the things that are absolutely statutory, and they are not included in the transformation priorities unless there is something we think we could do better or differently that would either reduce cost or improve children's lives within the budget we have available to us. So the transformation programme is very focused on 3 areas because of the current situation. So as I've described it there, we need to make sure that we have sufficiency. So in terms of overarching enough resources to predict the demand in terms of the system, which we know is building in both children's social care and in terms of education and healthcare plans, and to manage the needs of the most vulnerable children in the system, because some of that is unpredictable in terms of what comes forward with the available budget. In terms of efficiency, we know we need to make the best use we can of the resources that we have and make sure that the priorities that we've set in this transformation programme are agreed and clear and provide value for money in terms of the transformation programme that we're trying to implement. And finally, we need to make sure the golden thread through this, that we are managing risk, so that we are making sure that any action we take is timely and decisive, so that we do try and prevent crisis and that we prevent any deterioration in the services that children need. So in terms of the next slide, this sets out at a very high level the transformation priorities that we have going forward. So we currently have 4 key strategies in children's services that are driving the work that we need to do. And you'll see there are some key strands that go across all of them. A key theme is prevention. So preventing the need for escalation in terms of children's needs, trying to deal with those needs as early as possible, both as early in life as we can, and also as early as possible when people have a need or a problem starts to arise before it gets to the statutory level. So you can see on the left there, we've got the Education for Life strategy, which I think we have discussed at this committee before. And the key areas there are looking at the best start in life. So making sure that we do all the work possible across the system. So not just in the local authority, this is a multi-agency strategy. to ensure that children have that very good start in life. So looking at maternity, looking at communication in maternity, helping parents to understand the need to communicate with their children and to care for their child before the child's even born. Making sure that we're working with early years providers to make sure children have access, particularly vulnerable children have access to good early years provision. That public health nursing are identifying the right children who need that additional support, and the whole preschool system is working together to identify the children who have the greatest level of need, to get those children to the right place to be able to access school well. So that the problems, what's happening at the moment is some children are going to start in school and people are going, oh, and these problems that we didn't know anything about them. That's not good for those children, and it's not good for the system in terms of being able to identify that early. It's quite often those children have got to a point of needing statutory intervention by the time they're 5, sadly. Whereas if we identify those issues earlier and work with them earlier, we might be able to prevent that need and help children access school in a more positive way. The whole school focus is also helping. We know that in Somerset, the attainment levels for children in Somerset schools remains poor, and we need to improve that. So having a focus on the whole school and curriculum and helping people to work through an improved curriculum and therefore better attainment for children is an absolute priority. Again, that's also about trying to make sure that children are not excluded, so increasing attendance and reducing exclusions. And identifying the children most at risk of exclusion and building that effective team around the school model to make sure that those children can stay in school. Because we know that children out of school, children excluded from school or don't have a school place, are the children who are most likely to escalate very quickly through the system, into the care system, or into criminality or other problems. So actually trying to keep children in their local school with their peers local to home is absolutely critical to keeping children safe and thriving in their local community. In terms of school places, we know we have pressures in school places, particularly on the M5 corridor in Bridgewater and Taunton. So we're doing some work to try and reduce those pressures and look at what we can do to try and make sure that children have access to a school that is local to home in those areas particularly. And school transport, going back to what we just talked about now, we need to support children to attend their local school, so that we're making sure that children are accessing their local school. That will have an impact on value for money, because actually when children are attending their local school, a lot of children will therefore not need school transport. In terms of children looked after, we've talked about Homes and Horizons quite extensively in this group, I think. We are very confident that that is delivering what we need for our most complex children. As Sian said, it is reducing the number of children in unregistered placements, and we hope by the end of this month to be down to 1, possibly 2 children in unregistered placements with clear plans for them to move on, which from a height of 11, I think, last year is incredible. And a lot of those children have moved into Homes and Horizons and are doing well. No child in Homes and Horizons has moved from a Homes and Horizons home. The first one opened nearly a year ago now in January this year. And that none of those children have previously had any stability. So it's doing what we wanted it to do. In terms of fostering, as I said earlier, the underspend in fostering is a cause of concern. We do need to recruit and retain our own foster carers and support them well so that we can retain them and they can provide what our children need. There is a national problem in terms of fostering, in terms of people wanting to foster and staying in the fostering system. But we know that the answer to the children who have to be in the care system is to be able to recruit and retain our own foster carers, so those children have the opportunity to live in a family home, to learn about family relationships, and hopefully to thrive, achieve well at school and do well into adulthood. We have already done this piece of work around recommissioning our 16+ offer, so support for independence for young people at risk of homelessness. There is a new contract starting in April next year, which will take a broader range of young people, so they will be able to care for young people who have more complex issues than in the current contract, and that will mean that the cost reduces and the quality improves, because those young people who are currently in external placements for this age group will be closer to home and better supported through that contract. We're also working on our edge of care support. We obviously have very good edge of care support through the Family Intervention Service, but with that theme on prevention, we know that we need to continue to improve our edge of care support to make sure that we can keep children at home wherever possible, and support families earlier. You'll see in the Connect Somerset elements in a minute, how we intend to do that at a very early level, to make sure that children can stay in their own community wherever possible. Intelligence and control, that's about trying to improve our data. So we are very fortunate in Somerset to have an amazing business intelligence team, but if we could use that data better, we could improve our planning and the management of the work that we do to make sure that actually we do identify those children in communities very early in terms, and every community has different issues. Being able to identify the very local issues so that we can intervene earlier and differently in each community would really enhance what we could do to improve early intervention and early help for children. Shaping and managing the market is in there, so that's a critical step in terms of making sure that we work with the external market, where the number of children in our care we cannot manage with just the Homes and Horizons project on its own, but we do know that we need to work with the external market to shape the market locally, which is where we want children to be, to make sure that they have the right support in the right homes in Somerset wherever possible. There are very different ways of managing that market, and there are a lot of different players in that market. So you have the charitable sector, like the Shore Trust, you have small local providers, and you have very large equity-backed, private equity-backed providers. And we need to work with that market to make sure we have good quality provision, but at good value for money. And we also need to do a piece of work with the regional and regionally around commissioning. So part of a Peninsula framework, in terms of commissioning homes and residential homes and foster care, and we need to do that work to some degree more intensively to try and manage that market in the region as well as just in the county. So the themes that come through those two, I think, are about prevention in terms of doing things at the lowest possible level to keep children in their local community and thriving locally, and making sure that children can get to school is a really important factor, that they have a school place, they attend school regularly, and that they can achieve. So the second two are around the SEND strategy. So to some degree, the SEND strategy is a subsection of the Education for Life strategy, specifically looking at children with special educational needs and disabilities. The key aspects there are about making sure that we are working together. These are the key headings in the SEND strategy with our partners to help children achieve what they can, what they want to achieve. Getting help as early as possible for those children. Again, that focus on early help prevention, so that families can access the right support at the right time, preferably early before needs escalate. Making sure that families have the right information so that they can access the support and the provision that they need without difficulty, and also preparing children with special educational needs and disabilities for their futures in terms of going into adulthood appropriately. The final section there is around Connect Somerset. So this is about this is the model that effectively will get us to the future, should we say, effectively, financially, and in the right place for children. We have to develop a community-based and embedded in the community model. That means that young people and their families have the support they need in their local community. To some degree, that means we have to decentralise, we have to move services out into communities so that actually people in communities know that they can get that help locally from a local place, a local hub, that they recognise people they know in their community who will help them really early. It is getting to that really early help, which is below what we currently do. So currently we do early help, but if you look at it in the system, it's sort of probably a third of the way into statutory services. We need to be at 5% in the way into statutory services, so that people are at the earliest possible point able to say, I need some support, what can you do, how can you help me? So there's a lot of work in there to do that. So one of those is, as you can see there, Help for All. So that is also about making sure that professionals have the information about resources in their own community, so that they know how to access that and how to help people access that independently. It's about making people and communities resilient independently. And there's a lot of work going into digital work around this as well. So making sure, you might have seen some people Learn Through Love or Learn for Love on social media, which is about parenting programs that are online, that people can access, that people can do in groups, they could work on independently in a modular fashion. So if you've got a particular issue with a particular element of your caring for your child, you can look at that module, work through it on your own with somebody else, and it will give people that support. And it's the very early support where people think they're not quite sure that will support. Whereas at the moment, you only really get the support when you get to a level where you go, it's starting to be quite a problem, and people will then intervene. So it's helping to people to self-serve effectively. We're also looking at whether we can do some work, which other authorities, I think, I can't remember which one, someone in the Midlands has done some work where they have done some digital work with families where when a child is born, they communicate through text with that family on a very regular basis, giving them key messages. So things like, you know, when your child's about 7 months, your child may now be starting to sit up, maybe starting to crawl, etc. If you're worried your child isn't doing this, it's probably fine. Some children do it at different times. But if you're worried, these are the people you should now talk to, or these are the people that you can contact. So it's a digital mechanised way of doing it, but it gives you those very early bits of information as a parent that when you're worried and thinking, oh, I'm not quite worried enough to do something, it might nudge you to getting that very early support. So we're looking at that sort of system as well, not to replace people, but just to enhance that information and support effort mechanism to take a really early point. So team around the school is another element of Connect Somerset. So going back to the school attendance element, we know that school attendance is an issue across the country. It is a problem in Somerset as well. And building those local community networks. So we have people called area champions, at the moment 12 of them, who are leading Connect Somerset, who are working with schools to help them understand the resources in their local area, so that they can see schools can be made more aware of the resources that might help them keep children in school or help children in their community. And also we can identify through those 12 champions getting together on a regular basis, where are the gaps, where are the services we don't have anywhere in the county, and where are the particular areas of need that we might need to reconfigure resources and target resources at in particular geographies to help particular schools or particular communities to develop and be more resilient. And then there's a whole piece around developing that whole early help system workforce. So that isn't people in the statutory sector, that is saying to people in communities and the voluntary and community education sector, we need to help you. What is it that you need to develop your workforce to be able to meet those needs locally, so that we have a system that works, that isn't delivered by the local authority? We're a bit player in this. This needs to be about communities saying, this is the help and support and training we need to be the workforce for our own community, to support our community well. So those are the 4 key strands of the transformation priorities. It sounds big, it is absolutely massive, and these are the top lines. It is very ambitious, but we are really ambitious for our children in Somerset. We want the right things for our children and families, and we think we can do this. It's going to take time, it's going to take effort, both led by the local authority and led by our partners and communities. And we need increasingly to work with our communities so that they can be leaders and overtake us effectively and lead us and be part of that way forward. In those 4 boxes underneath this, you have the benefits, if you like, that if this works, and it will work, I'm determined it will work. These are the benefits that you will see for our children and young people, which might be areas that you as a scrutiny committee want to look at as we move forward to evidence whether we are able to show you that these elements of things are working. So I won't go through them all, but you can see under CLA transformation, as I talked about, children in care, we need to have more local foster carers for Somerset children. If we get that project right, that programme right under CLA transformation, you will see the number of foster carers in Somerset caring for Somerset children increase. So just looking at a couple of the others. In terms of the SEND one, if we're working this through properly and getting it right, in terms of exclusions of children with SEND, you will see fewer exclusions because we will have got the system working in an inclusive way for those children to be able to stay in school. And that also maps across back to Education for Life in terms of exclusions. So that also has reduced exclusions overall, because actually if that project's working, the children are in school, attending school, good curriculum, good engagement, those children will not be excluded from school. So that's, as I say, those are areas that you might want to look at as a committee and pick some of those in terms of perhaps show us the evidence that these are actually starting to have some traction. Okay, so other examples then, in terms of taking this down a level, if you like, in terms of what this is going to look like, mapping it across those 3 areas of sufficiency, efficiency and managing risk. We put some examples in here in terms of the way that we intend to progress this programme, and we'd be grateful for your views about whether this is the right way to look at this. This isn't all the areas, this is just an example of them. So in terms of the sufficiency one there, you've got to go back to foster carers again. We've got the increased numbers of in-house carers, more children in Somerset looked after by Somerset foster carers, and a planned timescale for that, so that you and other people can see the planned timescale for that. We're anticipating 30 additional Somerset foster carers for Somerset children by September 26. That may not sound like very many, that is net. So that means we will recruit more, but we know we will also lose some because we always lose some. So that's the net position of 30 additional carers who can look after our children. That's 10 additional foster carers a year. If we could move 10 children out of external placements into in-house fostering, that would save us about £1 million a year because of the reduction cost. And the outcomes for children are so much better. It's quite stark, the numbering. In terms of moving forwards, so another one on there would be the short break capacity for children with disabilities. We know that we have our children with disabilities, we do not have sufficient short break capacity. That is putting huge pressure on families for children with disabilities. And that means that those families are really struggling. That is pushing some of those families to the edge of their children needing to be in care because we do not have sufficient capacity in the system. We are doing a full service review. This started in November to look at how we can reconfigure what we have on the basis we will not have more money in the system, and to try and make sure that that does actually address the needs that we know for the families that are for those families. So that is something that's developing, and again, that might be something you want to look at as we go through that to actually challenge: are we doing the right things? Is it likely to have the right impact? Possibly bringing families into that conversation with you. Under efficiency, this is about making the best use of resources. So a lot of this is about Connect Somerset. But you can see in there the school transport procurement. We do need to improve the procurement of school journey transport and the efficiency of those routes provided to make sure we have the most efficient use of the transport we can use in terms of taxis, etc., and that we're not doubling up, or we could add other children to particular journeys, etc., to make that more efficient. There's a programme in design through the Transport Board. If anybody wants to join that board, you're very welcome. And that will give us better value for money, and it hopefully will increase the number of children supported to attend their local school. Just for time, if we just move on to managing risk. So managing risk is about risk as you would see it in terms of child protection terms, but it's also about managing risk more widely. So if you look at the first and the last of those, so the early years element there is about improving, as I said at the beginning, the identification of need and the intervention of children in the early years, that those children being ready to start school does manage risk in the system because it prevents those children underachieving, it reduces the likely escalation to high needs, and reduces the number of exclusions that are likely to be seen from those children not being in school. And at the bottom of that is a bit of an odd one, it might look in here, is making sure that we support schools to improve their practice and stop inadequate judgments. Because actually, if we don't do that, we will have a migration out of the system into independent, non-maintained schools at high cost, because the schools are not performing in the way we need them to actually be able to educate the children with special educational needs and other children with other issues such as social, emotional, mental health issues in their local school. That's got to the end of that, I think. Anybody got any questions?
Thank you, Claire, for that presentation. I see this, but okay, Martin, do you want to come in first? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Claire. That's great. I can see a clear focus and sort of thinking, you know, our overall council deficit and all the things that we're being pushed at the moment, that we can, in terms of children, engineer our way out of our problem, and that's exactly what you're describing. Possibly not to pin you down now, but a key thing seems to be how do you keep people with high needs in mainstream schools, because there seems to be, well, EHCPs aren't going to go away. The exponential increase in EHCPs clearly isn't going to go away, so we'll have to take that as a given. But can we have a feel as to what needs to be done to keep people with special educational needs more in mainstream schools? Because I'm getting the stories that the pressure for exclusion is so high because they can't cope. What do we need to do about it? I mean, I suspect it's a focus for another as a session of this committee, but maybe it's something we ought to put on our agenda for that purpose. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Martin, for your question. Next month is on the agenda, SEND and EHCP, so most of that point will be covered there. Did you want to just quickly, Claire?
Yes, so another item on this agenda is about the finance consultation, which is in place to partly look at how we can support schools better to support children with EHCPs or special educational needs in a mainstream setting. So that might help you too.
Thank you. Thank you. Rosemary, your hand was up. Did you want to ask a question, or was it just a rogue hand up? I take that as okay, members. So, could you take the slide back to the first one, please, in relation to with the 4 main topics on? I think it's one of the things that hopefully has come over today is the size of this task and the different parts and elements of it. The one with the pictures on, please. The Education for Life CLA. That's it. That's the one. Each of the bits. There are lots of things in there, and one of the things that I'm conscious of is both as chair and vice chair, the ability for us to be over every topic and understand everything. So I'm not going to scare everyone off, but previously what we've done, because we've got such a broad spectrum of members and co-opted members, what we've done previously was had maybe 2 members pick a topic and help drill down. Is that not to become experts in it? The last thing I would want is for you to the expectation that you're going to call you to the meeting to speak to it. That's not what the ability. Your vice chair and myself can't dig down or become aware of everything. So one of the things that I'm going to suggest, not necessarily for now, that we might want to look at next meeting, is some volunteers for the 4 topic areas that you see on there. The idea being that between meetings, you can go and meet the topic specialist or the manager and try and gain a bit more of an understanding of what it is. Because what that would then hopefully do is you would then say, "Oh, I didn't know about that." Perhaps the members, and you would then be able to suggest items from those topics for us to look at in a bit more depth. That way, yeah, I don't mean it in the way. I don't talk about area specialists. A member of this committee with a little bit more knowledge of one of the topics that they can then drill down, and then hopefully from that you would A, gain some more information and understanding of an area, and B, get something else of it, so you can come to the meeting and be able to question more. Because I'm conscious at the moment, I know this is a relatively new committee, and everyone, and hopefully with the topics we're doing, we're trying to help you learn as you go. So just forewarning, really, at the next meeting, one of the things I'm going to be asking is for volunteers. In the meantime, please don't think that between now and the next meeting you won't have an idea. So the question I'm asking is, members, do you think that's an idea, a good idea? And next one, following on, I've seen lots of nods, which is all good, which is good. It's come feeding in. I'm good. But also maybe to have a look at this slide yourself with a little bit more time and see which of the 4 areas you might be interested in. Because and then if you want to reach out between meetings, and then just email me and message me or speak to me, and we'll try back. Because I hope and I'm taking Claire by surprise by this suggestion anyway, but it might mean that Claire could recommend topic your officers for each of the areas, and then hopefully they would then be able to take those members on the journey with them to learn and understand a little bit more, and it would help us then to be able to become more aware of the different topic areas. I think that's an option that has worked before, and I know that members at the previous council, when we did it, when we were on our journey from with Ofsted and the topic areas that we had were benefit. I think the members got something from it, and I think it meant our meetings were able to. It's not just me put my hand up and asking questions. Hopefully, then it would gain through. So, pre-warning members, I've seen a reasonable consensus. And then I'll wait till the next meeting before I start dropping people into those areas. So take the time now to have a look at those points and see whether you can do any more. I'm not seeing any further questions. Francis, thank you.
Thank you very much for this. It's really helpful and it's very clear set of focuses. Or foci, perhaps, I'm not sure. The clearly supporting children involves all sorts of partners, our health service and so on and so forth. Well, this is a specific council focus, not a partnership one. But there is something here which is a within council thing, which I think is really important. I have banged on about it before. It's not got onto our work programme yet, but if we look at the efficiency, develop a whole system strategy to improve school attendance. Housing is part of this. Housing is part of this authority. There are cases where I know it's not working. And I do know that there is no sense in there are lots of different parts of the housing system that are involved. One tiny bit in terms of actual allocations. The school that children of a household attend is not one of the considerations, whether we can keep them at the same school in terms of housing allocation. There are lots of other things. That's quite a relatively small one. But in terms of supporting children, somehow we have to include housing in children's services. And I'm not sure that that idea has yet really caught the hearts of housing. So it's not really a question, sir. It's really a.
So we are aware of the integration of the different district councils and the county council into one council, that everybody's function, if you like, has to stretch and shape differently. One of the issues we do have is around, as you say, housing and the integration of housing understanding with adults and children's services. Obviously, it's about people, and vulnerable people need housing. So one of the things we're doing is we've asked Research and Practice, this is a national organisation that works with adults and children's services, to deliver some training in the new year, in January, for adults, children's and housing, to help us all work together in terms of a better understanding of each other's roles and how those need to flex to make sure that the most vulnerable people have the appropriate housing for their circumstances. And I entirely agree, Francis, that for children, the ability to keep going to your school is an absolutely critical one when you are effectively homeless and you have no centre to your world. Your school becomes the centre of your world, and that's an absolutely critical aspect of it. So we've talked to Research and Practice about that. We have a toolkit around housing and adults and children's services, which they're going to adapt to become a training course, which we will be the first to have, basically, to try to help us on that journey and get us all in the start, at least in the starting block together.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ruth.
And to turn it on its side.
There we go. A couple of things for me. So I think it's fair to say that as a group, we've heard a lot from parents around moving into adult services and the drop off around the short breaks provision. So I know you're looking at short breaks for children's, but is that going to be considered? I suppose one of my questions. And the other thing is, as a governor, I'm going to have to raise this around the Connect Somerset. I'm hearing from lots of schools that they don't know about it. Mm-hmm. So I think there's some work that needs to be done about awareness raising, that piece of work.
It's, well, Claire's making a note. It's interesting. I lines and links. I've made a note about Connect Somerset might be a topic that this committee may want to understand a little bit more about. I think the potential for it is really exciting, and I'll let you come back on Ruth's question if you.
That's really helpful. We'll sort that out.
I was just going to say, I think the next Somerset actually gives us a view of what the future might look like, because all we hear about is savings, savings and savings, which may feel like a reduction. This is the future. It's the way we should go. So it'd be really helpful, I think, to get Richard and Claire to come and talk to a meeting about that.
I agree. I can go out to the team around school, team around child, team around family, all the elements that are there. That's really that's proper. Get it in there where you should be at the right time. So as I say, I'm aware. So we have already made a note of that. Heather, I see that you wanted to come in.
Thank you, yes, and as a member of the group, I appreciate being heard, that's really kind, and I'm really lucky to have been in other rooms where I've heard a lot more about the content of the slides that have just been presented. And there's a couple of things that just made me think, is when you get something presented so fantastically, professionally and well, it actually makes it quite hard to ask questions about it, because it feels very comprehensive. Not a criticism, you know, you can see the thought that's gone into it. So there's a couple of things I thought of in response to Francis' comment. I was definitely thinking there's no question about care that doesn't include a question about accommodation. So absolutely bang on that the money is expected to be. It's really important. And that's not only the housing allocation, but it's also about the whole planning side of things as well. So there's a lot of work we have to try to do in the background around ensuring the right kind of houses are built. Oh, dear God, wouldn't that be lovely? But the questions that I was thinking in my head about the actual presentation was, certainly I've really had to learn an awful lot more over the last couple of months about 6 months about fostering and about the kind of permanence issue. And I don't know if that's something that this group's had much input on recently, because I think it's quite, you know, I came in thinking I had I get almost as a school person's going, you know, like a child's idea about what fostering might be, not having been involved in it. And I think the work around permanence that we're doing is fabulous. So all that work about increasing those, getting those 30 extra internal fosterers, I think would be really important. And I think the other thing was, well, when you look at that in its totality on that slide, there must be a number of those things there that are kind of unique, you know, that kind of trailblazing. Not many places I think are doing the Connect Somerset work, or even trying to, or thinking about it. I'm sure there's other issues that we're doing for the first time. I think seeing us in a benchmark of how we are against others, I think would be just a helpful thing. It's not necessarily scrutiny, but it's a bit of assurance to know that it is ambitious and it is brave. But if there are other people who are doing it well, let's see, let's make sure we're learning from those as well. Just some thoughts.
I'm sure that Claire will say that when it comes to best practice, we're always on the lookout for best practice. But in the same way, we're as you made with a number of our points of trailblazing. So, I acknowledge what you're saying. That what I was going to get back to, if you go back to where I started this bit with the champions for each area, under each of those 4 areas, there are some amazing things that are going on, and linking up. The homes is a good example. The accommodation. But the problem we have as a council is that because of the where we are with tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and the different tiers, we've still got a lot of our areas that are not sure where they fit. One of the things that I always talk about when we talk about this one council, for me, the wonderful thing about having one council should be that the route to a solution should be shorter now, because we're all in it together, and housing is one of those ones. Particularly so with my CLA. The ability to find our young people somewhere to live should be easier now because we're one council. But that's hopefully to come as we go forward. I got Rosemary online who would like. Sorry, I just realised. Ken, did you want to come back on at this point? I stole the glory then.
You're welcome. So in terms of sort of trailblazing, Homes and Horizons is nationally leading. We probably get 15-20 calls a week from different local authorities. Had an email this morning from NHS England, very excited. Got Ofsted coming tomorrow nationally, so the lead for social care nationally coming to look at that. In terms of the work with complex children, the Nuffield Family Justice Observatory are working with us as well. There's a lot of excitement about it being the way that the care system needs to look. It's the way the care system needs to move forward to get down to that broken. Connect Somerset is also very cutting edge. It's quite difficult to explain, I think, Connect Somerset, because as Tessa said, it's what the future needs to look like, and building all those parts to get there is a work in progress. So Richard is brilliant at explaining it, so it would be really useful for you to have that piece of work explained better than I can. I think the other areas there, so Education for Life, I can't say that we're nationally leading there. We are at the back of the pack in terms of we have so many exclusions. We have a really high rate of exclusions in Somerset, and we have to work differently to reduce the number of exclusions. We are not good in terms of school attendance. I wouldn't say we're the worst in the country, but we're not in a good place for school attendance. So that's an area where we're having to do a lot of work in that Education for Life strategy. And in terms of SEND, we've got a lot of issues in terms of SEND and how we work with children at SEND. So again, It's an area we need to put a lot of focus in, not because we're good, because we are not doing the right thing for our children, not getting the right outcomes for those children. So we need to learn from other authorities in other areas that are doing better than us, although we recognise particularly the SEND and in relation to attendance, there are a lot of national issues. So I think it's a mixture. We are doing some things brilliantly and other things we've got to work hard to get to a good place for our children.
Before I did the other bit that members of the committee and members online, at any point you can reach out to ask for some more information about one of the areas we cover. Then let's not wait till this meeting or the next meeting. That you can do that as you go, and I've always advocated the ability, if you have half a day spare, then speak to either your local ops centre or your local to say, can I come and have a look? And I know that they will welcome you, because you will gain an understanding that if speaking and listening to other people, to the front line is a really important point for us to have. Rosemary, you have your hand up. Did you want to come in there?
Yes. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, got you.
Hello. I just wanted to thank Children's Services. I wanted just to thank Children's Services for the help they've given us with a specific case for a SEND child, and I'm hoping that will continue. So I just wanted to thank them for the helping, and the counsellors, as counsellors, we can flag up problems if they come to us, but if they don't come to us, we can't flag them up. All right. I don't know if you're hearing me or not. I'm getting nothing.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you. I appreciate it. A question from me then, just to some clarity, please. You talked about support for independence. Is that the new name for P2I, Pathway to Independence, or is it still the same?
I have no idea what you're on about.
Thank you, Rosemary. I've moved on. I thank you for your comment, and I was looking to move on. Thank you, then.
So no, support for independence is a generic term for support. Sorry, support for independence is just a generic phrase for supporting children into independence. Pathways to Independence is the current 16+ offer. James told me it is going to be renamed, but not to support independence.
That was just missing some clarity. That's fine. Okay, it looks like Francis is my last one on this point, and then we'll look to move on. Francis.
Just to endorse the need for schools to be told more about Connect Somerset, but also that when schools know about Connect Somerset and contact Connect Somerset, they should get a response of some sort. That doesn't always happen.
Okay.
Thank you, members, for that point. So just to re-advertise the fact that the 4 topics are there. I'm looking for volunteers. If you have an interest, please don't hesitate to reach out. And in the same way, if you, as I say, I will not be looking for area specialists. A little bit of additional knowledge will help us be a better committee and understand everything that's going on. Claire and team, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm pretty certain that the slide with the 4 areas of your transformation will become very much part of our committee work, which I think is important that we do. Okay, we'll move on then. So that's item 7 of our agenda done. I'll just talk for a second while the presenters change over at our end. Thank you for that, and thank you for the item 8 of our agenda is in relation to the education and finance and the consultation that's currently taking place. Would Claire like to introduce it and then speak, and then thank you.
Okay, so this item relates to a consultation that we've just undertaken that closed on the 10th of November, I think, which wasn't a consultation about doing something specifically. It was about big ideas about how could we improve the finance situation in terms of education. How could we make that look different? to improve the opportunities for children to be included in school. How can we help schools feel more able to educate a wide range of children in mainstream education? Obviously, not every child is going to receive mainstream education, but we know that we have issues in terms of schools feeling they are not well supported in how we can do this better. So in terms of moving to the next slide, I'm not sure who's running the slide here.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, right, okay. So this is basically what went out in the consultation. So you can see this is the first slide. We've got budget challenges, we've said in here, and we were asking people to give us a comment on funding for education, about how we can do that. It says here there are 70,000 children of school age in Somerset, and we spend £568 million a year on education, apart from school buildings. So in terms of the consultation, we sent out the surveys. The survey went out to the county website, the council website, and you can see here on the 6th of November.
Sorry, just for clarity, who were you looking to respond?
There was a public consultation, so anybody could respond. We expected schools and parents to respond in the main, but we did have some general members of the public that could respond as well. So you can see here, in terms of this is on the 6th of November, so 4 days before it ended. But in order to get the papers in for this meeting, we gave you the data on the 6th, but it's not very different from the 10th, so I thought this would be helpful. You can see that we had 135 responses at that point, and 45 of the people who said they were responding as part of the school. Sorry, it's going to look at. Oh, we've now got. Okay. Said that they were responding on part of the school and gave the school's name. Phil's just told me that by the time we got to the end of the consultation, we actually had 346 responses. The vast majority were from parent carers, and the profile of that changes quite significantly. So you can't see that, but schools and members of the public were probably, that's up there now in terms of, yeah, that's the full consultation. So have I got a different one now? So we're going with that one now, are we?
So that was the one that was submitted in time.
Oh, right, okay. So we've updated it.
Yesterday, which
Which
was
is
the end of the
different, okay.
consultation. What you see in front of you is the end of the consultation.
Okay, so have the members of the committee got the updated one there? Okay, so you may have had two, you may have seen both. Right,
Can we see the new one?
that is the new one.
So, sorry, just for clarity, members, forgive me, there was a supplement paper circulated yesterday with the updated information. That's on your ModGov if you need it. And Claire, if it helps, what's being shown are the updated slides.
So you would have had two versions. So the original that went out was the one I just referred to, but the one that we're showing is the one that you had a couple of days ago, as the chair said. Okay. So in terms of the problems, what we did in the consultation was set out a series of problems. I think it's 4 problems that we thought we had as a system in relation to education funding. So this sets out the first problem. So this is about funding for children with special educational needs and disabilities. We know that we spend an awful lot of money on special education and disabilities, particularly in relation to education health care plan. And it's spent on different things depending on what each child's needs look like. So you can see on this slide, the next slide, please, Fiona. We've seen a really big increase in the number of education healthcare plans being created and a decrease in the number of those coming to an end. And that's happening all around the country, and you can see that picture, that's the national picture rather than the local picture in terms of what's anticipated over the next few years. So what we were proposing in this first one is that the system leads to, well, so it gives you some context, because the current system from parents and the school perspective in some way leaves the schools feeling they have to apply for an education healthcare plan in order to access funding. Those children don't necessarily need an education healthcare plan, but the way the system works, they feel they have no option but to apply for it to get the funding they need to support that child. So what we need to do is try and work out if there's some way of doing this differently, being careful about how we do that. So we could look at different ways of giving schools money up front, so that means they don't feel they need to just get an EHCP to get the funding for that child. We have done that previously in other incarnations, so we need to be careful not to repeat the mistakes of the past. But we wanted to get a view from parents and schools about what they felt about that. So we weren't putting any specific proposals forward. We were saying, what do you think about giving schools more funding upfront to try and help them keep children in mainstream schools and mean that they don't need to apply for that funding? Because the other aspect of saying I need some more funding is, can I actually educate this child, or do I need to apply for funding so that this child can go somewhere else? Which, if we gave them the funding up front, might mean that we get a slightly different response. We don't know whether this would work, as we said at the bottom of that slide, but we could test it and see whether it has an impact. So the other aspect of this is about banding, so this gets a bit complicated. So if a child goes to a mainstream school with an EHCP, the amount of money that they get is in a band for the level of need that's identified for them, but they would get, for the same band, if they were in a special school, the special school will get more money, because that's the way the banding structure has been created. So there's a bit of a sort of strange incentive for your child to go to a special school, because even if if the child's in the same band, that school gets more money to educate your child. So we need to look at whether we could equalise that somehow to make it so that mainstream schools and special schools for children in the same band have the same amount of money. So we wanted to have a look at what people felt about that proposal too. And then the third one was about pupil budgets. So when an education and healthcare plan is created, we don't really talk to parents about the funding aspect of that in terms of how much money that child is going to have assigned to them for their education. They have an EHCP on a particular level. And we worry that sometimes parents think they need to get a high band in order to get lots of funding so their child will get lots of better things. We do know, as we said in this slide, it's not always the most expensive things that make a real difference. It might be the type of thing that we offer that child that makes the difference, and it may not be the most expensive. So we wondered whether we could look at working with parents more closely in terms of setting a budget based on that child's needs. Parents had a view and a voice in the decision making, and what parents would feel about that in terms of whether that would make a difference too. So this next slide looks at which areas, so we're asking people which of the areas they would like us to develop in terms of moving that forward for detailed proposals to be put forward. And you can see there that the most popular ones there are giving money directly to schools so that they can support children with SEND without the need for applying for the HCP, and also making funding for schools more equal. But when we break this down, you can see that the bandings look quite different in terms of who responded to which question more positively. So this slide breaks it down by the type of person who responded. At the bottom, yeah. So at the bottom of that, you've got the key. So you can see parents and carers are in blue. So the vast majority of respondents were parents and carers. Schools are in that sort of peachy orangey colour, and the sort of maroony colour is members of the public. So when you break it down like that, you can see that actually, although the third question overall around personal budgets or child focused budgets was the less popular in terms of the least popular out of the three options, if you look at it from a parent perspective, that was the most popular option that parents wanted to take forward. Yeah. What we do think about that question, though, is that we've asked the question in a way that is confusing, because there are various ways of children being, or families having access to money for their child's education, other aspects of their health and care, which are direct payments and personal budgets, which we think people might have thought we were referring to in this question because we haven't made it clear enough. So we need to think about that. Okay, so that's the first set of questions that we asked people. The second set of questions is about early help. And we know that early help, as I've described in the transformation slides, is really important in terms of both early years and early help in itself. So we've talked in this slide a little bit about Connect Somerset, and we also know that in schools, early help is largely provided by parent family support advisors, PFSAs, where we have some funding issues because of an education budget that is reducing, and we need to look at a different way of funding that or doing that work differently. So this is the slide that talks about the PFSAs in terms of the very complicated education budgets and how they work and why we're struggling with that. The PFSA funding, it's in something called historic commitments and where they're funded, and that fund reduces by from central government at 20% a year, and that is now cutting to the level where PFSA funding cannot be taken on that block for very much longer. So this is the proposal that went into the consultation about how we might be able to fund that in terms of over the next 5 years. So looking at reduction, you can see sort of in the middle, historic commitments, the reduction in funding from historic commitments, the council contribution that we might be able to put in there, looking to our partners to see if we could get funding from them, and also looking at the schools blocks in various other ways in terms of how we might be able to support that funding as we go forward. And you can see the proportions at the bottom in terms of what we're proposing, the proportions of funding would look like from each of those different areas over the next 5 years, and they change significantly over that period. So that was part of the consultation, so people could see that. So in terms of the early help consultation, in terms of the question we asked, which was largely a question for schools really, but anybody could have responded to it. It was about taking money from the schools block, matched by the people, to fund the early help over a 5-year period. That was the response. So there was a slightly bigger proportion of people who said yes. But again, when you break that down, you can see it was largely parent carers who said yes, in larger numbers. And when you break it down into a school or organisation, it was actually more schools said no to that than said yes in that bottom group. So 37 schools said no, 33 schools said yes. And members of the public, who we don't know who they are, of course, were also more positive about it. So funding for early years, as in early years providers, is another issue of contention because there's not enough money in the system from central government for the early years sector. So some early years providers are really struggling to meet their costs, and some early years providers are therefore closing down. And that is not what we want in terms of our transformation plan. We need more early years providers to provide targeted support to the most vulnerable children. So we were looking to ask people what they thought might make a difference here. So obviously the best option is to increase hourly rates for providers, but we can't do that because we don't have enough government funding. But what we could look at is some early years providers pay business rate and some don't. Because of their status, I think if you're a charity, you don't. If you're a business, you do. But they're all in the same position in terms of funding. So we wondered what people felt about should we look at mitigating some of the business rate impact to try and support some of those providers. And we also asking about the eligibility. So there's even on parents and universal credit can access funding for childcare. And there's also something called early years pupil premium. And those quite often go unclaimed by nursery providers because the administration of those benefits or the income is really complicated. So we're asking, could we make that, if we made that simpler, would that have an impact? And again, you can see there, in terms of the consultation responses, most people were very keen to look at the ability to recoup the early years premium funding more than they were for the other two options in terms of those other two options. But again, when you break that down, parents, again, were very keen in this area. They were very involved in this area. And schools responded. I don't think we had a separate block for early years providers in here, did we?
If they're encompassed in the schools.
Okay, so Phil's saying the early years providers are encompassed in the schools numbers for this, but it would be early years providers that will be most interested in this. And you can see that it's fairly evenly split, but the most popular slightly is that one around recouping full funding for universal credit or early years pupil premium. Okay, and this final question was a question just for schools. This is complicated. I'm in no position to explain this to you. Don't know if you want to explain this, Phil, or is it, or if you want to just get me to read it.
Microphone.
Turn the microphone.
On the front.
It's on the front, just so, yeah.
So my colleague Sean will jump in when I get this wrong, but the minimum funding guarantee is essentially the rate by which we commit that a school's budget will increase by a minimum amount. Historically, we've agreed that increase before we knew how much was available in the overall pot. And last year, for example, we agreed the minimum funding guarantee. And then once we had the national funding settlement came through, we realised that that had to be dedicated schools got the schools blocking into a deficit position. So we had to move money around the system in order to honour the minimum funding guarantee. Through this consultation, what we asked schools to do and other stakeholders is whether we should reverse the process. So we undertake the national funding settlement first, and then we look at the minimum funding guarantee once we know what is affordable. So that's the question we asked. Can we change the process and award the minimum funding guarantee based on what we know is affordable by agreeing that figure in advance?
Thanks for that explanation. Obviously, why I couldn't explain that. In terms of schools, we did expect people to answer this question. Only 60 of 165 people who responded to this question actually identified themselves as a school, which is quite interesting. That members of the public obviously felt they needed to give a view on this as well. So yes, comes out slightly more strongly from the schools, but only slightly, and it's a really it's a difficult one to call this, I think, in terms of the responses. And we wonder if parents responding misunderstood the question, because it is quite a technical question, which we only expected schools to understand, and whether parents understood it as funding for schools rather than the minimum funding guarantee as a technical question. Okay, so that's the overall outcome of the consultation. I think what we're thinking, and we welcome your views, is that it's the first two questions that will be the ones that we would take forward probably in the first section. Okay, right, that's the beginning. So in terms of the work that we would do, we look at. Sorry, if you only can't see it, yes, it's the. The one that's headed, which of the following should be developed further into detailed costed options for consultation. Under problem 1, I think it's about slide 3. Sorry, keep going back. Next one. Keep going. Oh, they're going backwards now. So the next one. That might be difficult to do it, but I'll just talk it through.
After 1C, it's the next,
It's
it's 2 or 3
slides
there.
after that.
2 slides later. That's it, thank you. So the 3 in the first one were about giving money directly to schools so they can support children with SEND without needing to apply for the HCP. That was something that came up quite strongly as people wanted us to explore that. So we do intend to look at that in more detail, come up with a detailed proposal, and make the funding for schools more equal in terms of banding between mainstream and special schools. Again, that comes out quite strongly. We do intend to explore that. We don't intend to take forward the paid pupil budget for parents, although that was very strongly put forward by parents, we don't think that people completely understood the question because we phrased it wrongly. So we would like to continue to work with the parent forum to help parents understand what we actually meant, because we weren't very clear, so that we might be able to take that forward in the future if that's something that parents think it would be helpful in the future, but we don't intend to take that forward immediately. In terms of the other areas, sorry, I won't make Fiona do this, it's too difficult, isn't it? So the schools block funding, we needed to take this one to the schools forum. It's a decision that schools forum will make about the schools block funding, which we intend to do in early December. No, next week, talk to them about that. And obviously we will give them all the information that has come here in terms of schools' views, because not all schools are represented on the schools forum. The early years ones, we will take forward the option that has come across more strongly there about simplifying the process for providers to claim the universal credit and early years pupil premium, as that's clearly the area that providers are keenest to look at. So we'll come forward with a clearer proposal, a detailed proposal about that as well. And then the minimum funding guarantee is also something that needs to go to schools forum. So we will take the outcomes of the survey to schools forum next week so that they can see those outcomes in terms of informing their decision about what happens going forward.
Members, questions? Bruce and then Francis.
So I just wanted to respond really around the pupil budgets. So all the schools and the parents that I spoke to thought this was a personal budget that should be part of an EHCP anyway. So there was a lot of confusion about, well, why are you asking us if you should do something that you should be doing anyway? So I think that's where that has come from, if that makes sense. And I do think there is room in Somerset to improve our use of personal budgets, and that could be savings for the county.
Thank you. And Francis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really welcome this. I think this is imaginative and helpful. I think that there are a few things that I would want to us to be aware of. You've mentioned that not repeating the mistakes of the past. I have ringing in my ears. It's much better for schools. It's much quicker. It's much simpler to get the money out of schools without any HCP. And it's led to distortions in that at that time, the arrangements meant that a different kind of need got a different kind of funding. And so surprise, surprise, there were an awful lot of children with one kind of need and hardly any children with another kind of need. So we need to be really careful that we don't do that. We also need to be, I think, really careful because another risk is, as I understand it, children in mainstream pupils have a per pupil amount that goes to the school, special schools don't. So when we're evening up the money in the banding, we need to make sure we have got that bit in there. And if special schools don't feel that, they will worried about unfairness the other way. But absolutely, let's get the money if we can be to mainstream schools. Let us both support and expect mainstream schools to be supporting for more children. The only worry I have on that one is that, as I understand it, if it's if it comes, money comes under an EHCP, then that money is ring fenced in the school's budget. If it doesn't come under an EHCP, it is not ring fenced. And if the child, so there is no guarantee that it will be used for the purpose that it's meant for. And the other bit is that if the child changes school, then there is no necessity for any understanding of what a well-meaning school that's already got people in it will be doing, will transfer to the new school. So there are risks which I think we've really got to address. But in principle, yes, absolutely, because where we want children supported is in mainstream schools. but it's about making sure it really is fair, that it's not, doesn't produce perverse incentives, and it does safeguard the support for that child, which is what that child needs. That's that one. On the early help one, if may I, Mr. Chairman, can I go on? Yeah. I think it's a triumph that 33 schools said yes and 37 said no. That is very, very close. That is far closer than the technical question one that you were saying was very close. I think that has shown a lot of work with schools, because I would have expected every school to say not in your life. But so I think that's a triumph. It is. The one thing I would say about this is it is incredibly important somehow to keep the PFSAs. So I think this is a good start. And actually they were very, very close. On the early years, you're going to take forward the universal credit one. I can quite see that other parts of this council might worry about reducing or removing the liability for providers for business rates. I wouldn't have thought it was a lot of work actually to do that, make that change. It would feel hugely supportive to an awful lot of early years settings, and would really, I think, make a difference. So I would want to put in a plea actually to consider that. And the technical question, it seems sensible. I can't see why you wouldn't do that. So just really reflections from me.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on any of those points?
Really helpful, thank you.
Okay. I've got Joe next, so welcome. Forgive me, I didn't welcome you at the start of the meeting. I apologise. But thank you very much.
That's fine. Obviously, I've got a bit to say about this one. In terms of.
Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sorry, everybody. My name's Jo Simons. I'm head teacher at South Somerset Partnership School in Yeovil, which is the pupil referral unit. I also have been co-opted to represent Somerset Schools Forum. So that's why I'm here. So I've got a bit to say about this one. But don't look so scared. So in terms of proposal one, one of the things that I remember, actually a lot of the things I think probably Francis had picked up, it's no good kind of talking about the good old days because they weren't that good.
Well, that good.
However, as I understood it, when we moved away from that, what we used to call audit funding, one of the reasons for doing that, not the reason, was that it wasn't in line with the SEN code of practice. So I think we've got to be really careful if we move into that we're absolutely in line with that. So it wasn't the reason, but it was a reason for moving away from that. In terms of the second one around, giving money to schools upfront and equalising the banding, which is something that I've talked about a few times over the years. It might be useful when you're talking about EHCPs, just to talk about nominal SEND funding in schools and what that looks like, because special schools and specialist provisions have place funding. The theory is it's the same in a mainstream school, so it's your ARPU, the money per child, plus the nominal SEN, and then the banding is equal. So I just think an explanation around that might be useful. I know these things, but they are really complicated and make life, kind of difficult. I am worried about the PFSA match funding and schools saying, and not all schools saying, actually, that's a really good idea. I think it has moved a really long way. And I think schools need to understand the impact if we don't move that forwards. And some of that for me is to do with the workforce. There's an awful lot of PFSAs out there who about now every year for about the last 5 have said, oh, we'll have a job in April, and we go, no, I'm sorry. And obviously people move on. So we've got a risk, I think, in terms of our workforce with those people. So the understanding about the impact if schools kind of say no. And in terms of the minimum funding guarantee, I think that just needs to go to schools forum. I think it's quite a technical financial question for them to rumble on about, and then a decision to be made about those. So that's what thank you.
So thank you for your input.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I'd like to reassure you, I think, that we don't intend to do this on our own, so we will do this with schools.
I'm not doing it.
so that actually we've got the whole systems perspective on what we're doing, because obviously it's very complicated and we need to understand everybody's views and also, you know, looking at all the different elements of the guidance. I think in relation to PFSAs, one of the reasons for looking at doing it in this way is the 5-year funding fact, so that actually PFSAs, who, as you say, are on a year by year, am I going to have a job next April, to try and even that so that they have at least 5 years of guaranteed funding if we can get it through the system, so that people know they have a job in that period of time. You then create, hopefully, a more consistent workforce who can be better trained and supported in a way that we understand as a system, rather than a very short-term contract and way of working with those people.
It's not unreasonable. That's our main big in schools early help thing, if you like, that, you know, connection between everything, that schools make that contribution.
Thank you. Online we have John Hunt. John, I'd like to ask you a question, sir.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just a very brief one actually about the money up front for the instead of the EHCPs claiming that money for schools. Two questions on that really. How do we assess that amount of money? How do we estimate that prior to paying it to the schools? And also in our current financial position, i.e. Somerset Council's current financial position, is this actually feasible now? Thank you.
Yes, so in terms of the money, Councillor Hunt, it's not local authority funding, it's from the schools grants. So it's already in the schools grant, we just will be looking to use it differently in terms of upfront funding schools, in terms of handing it out on an individual basis. The way that we would assess the how much money each school got is something that we need to work through, and we will need to get some sort of business intelligence and modelling support to do that, so that we understand how we should allocate that funding up front for each school.
That's terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in here because obviously Francis and Joe both mentioned some of the challenges that we're going to have around the allocation. So I think one of the things that we need to hold in our head and just make sure that we have considered this is obviously when we were inspected last, when we had our revisit, one of the things they said is that children that have got an EHCP currently aren't guaranteed to be getting what's actually in their plan. So what we don't want is a system where we're giving the funding out and again what we're expecting to be delivered isn't being delivered. So I suppose one of the questions is, can we have some reassurance that there will be some monitoring that happens with the funding being released to schools early?
So that would be an absolutely critical part of developing that approach, that we need to have a very strong QA approach to making sure that the funding was being used for the purposes for which it had been provided.
Okay, now, so I've got Heather that want to come in, and then I've got a couple of points. But for you,
It was a really very a small question for clarification, really. I just wondered if we knew, out of 76 or so school respondents, how many of those were early years settings? What proportion of the schools, or do we not know at all?
So we don't know from top line data, but we can break it down in terms of the schools by looking at the individual respondents where they've said who they are. So we will be able to work out which are early years provided.
thank you, everyone. Thank you for your points. A couple of points from me, just to, when it comes to surveys, you can read into surveys lots of different things from lots of different perspectives. And I've a little bit of concern in the fact that you, for 2 out of 3 questions, you were saying there may have been a misunderstanding in what was meant. You also, there's an element of unclarity about who actually responded and where they came from and how it came. So my question to you, Claire, I suppose, is how comfortable are you with the what you have at the end? Because to me, I'm reading a little bit of doubt into it. So am I wrong?
I think the 2 questions, particularly the question around personal budgets, the sort of pupil budget, I think we called it, that question, we are very sure that people have misunderstood what you meant. And that is a poor use of language, and we have reflected on that. As I said, we don't intend to sort of throw that out. What we intend to do is try and rework that, work with parent care reform to talk with parents in a different way, to have more direct conversation about this is what we mean, what do you think, what might that look like in the future. because possibly a consultation as a written document wasn't the best way to have that conversation or to ask that question. I think the other one was about minimum funding guarantee. Was the other one. It is a very technical question. I don't think it's quite well described, I think, on that consultation. I don't think if you're a school, you would understand exactly what that meant. And we did say this is a question for schools in the consultation. So the school responses are probably right. I think members of the public have tried to respond to that. So I don't know what they understood by that. And we did headline it very clearly. This is a question for schools only. So I'm confident that because it only relates to schools, effectively the school responses are adequate for what we needed to understand.
That's fine. It's just that you're asking for our thoughts, but I would suggest some caution in how it goes forward, because we need to be, as we always, I know you will, we need to be taking people with us rather than forcing something on them that they may not want. And just one final point, to the next meeting, when we do send in EHCPs, I think there's a bit of clarification that's needed around the different bandings and where all that comes up, that would help fill in some of the gaps that this questions are asking for members around the table. I remember when we were transitioning from statements over to EHCPs and how that went and the different confusion elements there. So that the journey to where we are now would be helpful, I think, in next month's presentation, because there's a lot of clarification there, particularly around who should be paying for what, where, and it's often the case. And I think partly we're a little bit made a rod for our own back in the fact that because we as a council have been pushing back on schools, as is the need for an EHCP is more prevalent there, but that's for next month rather than for now. Thank you, members, for that one. We're on the homeward stretch, so don't worry about it. And thank you, Claire, for your presentation. And so moving on then, item number 9, which is a little bit of a report back for our standing panel for education standards. My vice chair.
Thanks for nominating me. No, I love it. It's 5 minutes. So one thing I have learned, we are just dipping our toes in. It was our first meeting, and it's quite alarming how interconnected everything is. So I know yours previously spoke about people having a look at different areas, but with the connections, you don't want to segregate. So we do need to talk, and it would be quite nice to actually have an area where we can have discussions rather than the static lines of what we're talking about, because I think we'll learn more with conversations. So the first meeting took place on the 26th of October. The following items were discussed. The expected good level of development from the early years foundation stage, moving into education breakdown, background and strategy, with the main focus in this section seeing an introduction into when children are assessed and what the performances of the children from Somerset looks like against South West and national targets. Data from Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 4, updates on recent data from how Somerset compares with previous years and compared to national averages and for selected pupil groups. We did see that the disadvantaged pupils, the gaps were really low, but almost in line with other South West authorities. Also looking at data, we had a learning session on understanding data snapshot, an introduction to the tool that's been created in-house that shows headline data for Somerset schools and multi-academy trust, which forms part of the Thriving Schools work within the Education for Life programme, which we've discussed earlier. And I will commend the work that has gone into this. It's a tremendous amount of work. Honestly, hats off to you guys. We were able to see how schools within our own wards were doing. We were able to see an example actually of a school, which I'm not going to name because I don't know if I'm allowed to, shows how they had great potential and results despite facing the extreme challenges. And with this, members discuss what future meetings may look like. So the further explorative work to see why things are working out for some educational establishment and not so much for others, using our shared advice and shared learning between us. And it's important here and moving forward, the need to raise the levels of the results for the underperforming pupils. the low attainment, which I think Francis brought up. 2 was looking at exploring coding of absences and understanding what is actually going on there without just having everything in one box. So key focuses on school improvement offers, the collaborative working to meet our ambitions as a council and to improve the outcomes for our children. Now, as I say, my experience with children is, have you got the school bag? Have you done your homework? Off you go, pop it, have a lovely day. So me coming into this in the last year, I am still learning. So any questions, I may not be able to answer, but I will get the answers for you.
Thank you. Just for clarity, obviously, our first meeting was, it was an introduction so that we could understand where we are, but some of the tools that are being offered to allow us to help and understand a little bit better were really inspiring, and they're helpful and interactive. As I say, it was our first meeting, so if anyone has any questions or follow-up, what we'll try to do is just send you a briefing note out in relation to what we just discussed, what the first meeting had, but I'm not seeing any hands or anything, so really thank you for that. Thank you for your report back. Okay, moving on then to almost there, item 10 of our agenda, just for information for everyone in the room, that as I've said before previously, what would happen if there are items for information or to note, they're circulated between meetings so that you're able to have a look at them and give them an opportunity, if you have any questions, to come back on those. There's a list of the items that were circulated there. Any points or comments? Members, thank you very much for your time. So we're reminded to check the location for next month's meeting beforehand, and any in between meetings, any questions or points, please feel free to reach out. Thank you for your time today. Meeting closed.